Snow swirled over the frozen plains like white smoke drifting from heaven. When Clara Dawson stepped off the old steam train and onto the lonely platform of Red Creek, the wind cut through her thin coat as though even the weather understood she came with almost nothing. No family left to speak her name, no money except the few coins hidden in her worn shoe, and no past she wished to carry forward. Everything she was, everything she hoped to become, hung inside the single brown suitcase she clutched to her chest as if it held her beating heart. The wooden boards creaked beneath her boots, and for a moment she wondered if the earth itself doubted her right to be here. She inhaled sharply, watching her breath fog into the icy air. This is it, she told herself. Your new beginning. Red Creek was quieter than she imagined. She had pictured something lively, maybe the soft glow of homes lit for Christmas, families bustling in warm clothes, or carolers singing along snowy streets. Instead, the town was buried in silence, the kind born from winter storms or the weight of people's worries. The train behind her wheezed once more before crawling away, leaving her entirely alone with the fear she tried so hard to swallow. When the last carriage disappeared, Clara felt the truth strike sharply. There was no turning back now. She readjusted her grip on her suitcase and scanned the empty road. The man who was supposed to meet her, the man who had written letters full of kindness, duty, and the quiet loneliness of a widower, was nowhere in sight. Elias Walker, a rancher of good reputation, or so the matrimonial agency had promised. A man who needed help raising his small son. A man who had chosen Clara from a stack of letters, written by desperate women seeking new lives in the West. Clara had written her letter with trembling hands, unsure if anyone would ever choose someone like her, a woman whose past was stained with poverty, whose beauty was plain, whose dreams had been reduced to simple survival. Yet Elias had written back, not with flowery words or promises of love, but with something she valued more, honesty. He needed a companion for his boy. He needed someone gentle. He needed help. And Clara, she needed a home. Just as she feared she'd been abandoned, the sound of hoofbeats echoed along the barren street. She turned, bracing herself for disappointment, yet there he was. A tall man rode toward her on a chestnut horse, his coat dusted in snow. His hat pulled low to shield his eyes from the biting wind. His shoulders were broad, the kind of build shaped by long days of work and seasons spent wrestling with the land. As he approached, Clara's heart pounded, not out of fear, but from the heavy realization that her future rested with this stranger. He brought the horse to a stop a few feet away. His eyes, gray like a storm, met hers. There was no smile, no warmth at first glance, but also no cruelty. Instead, there was something hollow, something tired, something wounded deeply. "You, Clara?" he asked, voice rough as though he hadn't spoken much in days. Clara nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Clara Dawson." He gave a short nod. "I'm Elias Walker." He dismounted, landing in the snow with a thud. "Let me take your bag," she hesitated. For so long, her suitcase had been her only dependable companion. But she released it, and his large hand wrapped around the handle with surprising gentleness. "Welcome to Red Creek," he said gruffly, though his tone sounded more like habit than hospitality. Clara forced a smile. "Thank you." The silence between them stretched like a frozen river. He wasn't rude, just distant, guarded, and Clara understood then what the agency letter had not said. This man carried grief like a second skin. He offered his hand to help her onto the horse. She placed her small gloved fingers into his. Warmth shot through her instantly. Not romantic warmth, not yet, but the warmth of a man who, despite his hardness, had warmth left to give. He lifted her easily, then mounted behind her, leaving a respectful space. The ride to the ranch was long and cold. Wind slapped against Clara's face, the world passing in white blurs of snow and distant mountains. She tried to admire the landscape, but her stomach twisted with nerves. Should she speak? Should she stay silent? Each time she opened her mouth, her courage failed. Elias remained quiet too, as though words were burdens he could not afford. When the ranch finally came into view, Clara gasped softly. The property stretched wide, fields blanketed in snow, fences lining the land like quiet sentinels, a large barn with smoke curling gently from its vent, and a sturdy farmhouse whose lamplight flickered against the growing dusk. It looked like a place carved out of loneliness, built for a man who preferred silence over the company of others. Inside the house, warmth embraced her instantly. The scent of pine drifted through the rooms, and the wooden floors creaked softly under her boots. Clara took everything in with cautious awe. The home was simple. A few chairs, a sturdy table, a stone fireplace, but it felt lived in, real. A small noise made her glance toward the staircase. A little boy peered down, a child no older than 6, with soft blonde hair and blue eyes wide with fear and curiosity. He held a small wooden horse tightly against his chest. Elias cleared his throat. "This is Matthew." Clara smiled gently and knelt, lowering herself to meet the child's eye level. "Hello, Matthew." The boy hesitated. Then in a tiny voice he whispered, "Are you gonna be my new mama?" The question hit Clara like a sudden gust of wind. Not because she was offended, no, but because she heard the longing behind it. A longing she once knew as a child. Elias stiffened sharply. "Matthew, don't—" "It's all right," Clara whispered. Her voice softened like falling snow. "I will be your friend, sweetheart. I will always be kind to you." Matthew blinked once, then smiled she had seen since stepping into the house, and it warmed her more than the fire crackling behind her. Over the next days, Clara learned the rhythms of life at the Walker Ranch. She rose before dawn, helping with breakfast while Elias fed the animals. She swept floors, mended shirts, hung laundry, and tried her best to bring comfort to a house that still echoed with the sadness of the woman who had once lived here. She noticed the empty chair at the table, the photo frame turned face down on the mantel, the way Elias paused sometimes, just a heartbeat too long, when passing by the closed door of the old nursery. Matthew grew attached to Clara quickly. He followed her around the house, asking for stories, holding the hem of her skirt when he felt shy. He laughed again, softly at first, then louder each day. Elias noticed, but kept his distance. Clara found herself studying him when he wasn't looking. The way he repaired fences in the freezing cold, just so Matthew wouldn't get hurt. The way he stood outside sometimes, staring at the sky as if speaking to someone he'd lost. The way he stayed awake long after Matthew slept. His thoughts heavy, his eyes tired. She wanted to reach him. She wanted to offer comfort. But she knew grief better than most. She knew when a person wasn't ready. Everything changed the night before Christmas Eve. The storm arrived like a beast unleashed. Howling winds, snow whipping violently against the windows, and the ranch trembling under the weight of winter's fury. Power flickered, then died. The lanterns went out one by one. Elias cursed under his breath. "Damn storm." He grabbed his coat. "Stay inside with Matthew." "I need to secure the barn doors before the animals panic." "Let me help," Clara urged. No, his tone was sharp. Not cruel, fearful. "It's dangerous." He left before she could reply. Minutes passed, then more. The storm grew worse. Branches slammed against the house. The wind screamed like a wounded creature. Clara's heart raced. Something's wrong. Against every warning, she wrapped a thick shawl around herself and stepped outside. Winter hit her like a wall, cold so sharp it stole her breath. Snow blinded her, but she pushed forward. "Elias!" she called, her voice cracking. "Elias!" She found him near the west fence, half buried under a fallen beam, fighting to free himself. The wind roared. His face was twisted in pain. "Clara, go back!" he shouted. "No!" She stumbled forward, digging her heels into the snow. "I won't lose someone else, not tonight." With all her strength, fear mixed with fierce determination, she lifted the beam, just enough for Elias to drag himself out. Both collapsed into the snow, gasping. Elias grabbed her shoulders. "You could have been killed." "So could you," she whispered, voice shaking. Their eyes met, no walls, no distance, only truth. For the first time since she arrived, Elias really saw her, not as a mail-order bride, not as a stranger, not as a hired companion, but as a woman who ran into a storm for him, A spark ignited, fragile, unexpected, but impossibly real.